So, hello everyone, and welcome to Warpaths, a virtual matrix gaming tool. My name is Graham Longground from the Connections UK team. More important, we've got Tom Nagel with us, who's going to tell us all about Warpaths and show us a demonstration. Just to remind people of the Q&A rules of the road, please put your questions into the Discord server, and then they'll be carried across to this. You'll see them as a banner, and then I will corral them at the end and put them to Tom. I'm not going to say too much about Tom because the bios are on the app in those three top left lines in the drop down. But Tom is the creator of Warpaths, which has been used by the military and will soon, I think, be run out to non-military, to governments and to corporations. And most importantly, from my perspective, Tom is also going to help us with Connections UK coming up in September, where hopefully what you're going to see now will be taken forward into a hands-on play and learning by playing experience. So with that as a prospect looking forward, Tom, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Graham. And so I should be sharing my slides right now, if I could bring those slides up. Okay, thanks. Great to be here and happy to talk about Warpaths, which is the virtual strategic wargaming tool. What I'll do is just share a couple of slides that I'll go over as an introduction, and then I'll transition over to a demo. So we'll jump right in. So as a quick overview, Warpaths is a browser-based platform for conducting strategic level matrix war games. You can use laptops or smartphones as you're conducting your game. And the intent here is to give you user level control of the game scenario, allow you to build and develop your own scenario that you want to run, as well as set your map view, assign players to teams. It works by an email invite system that assigns players to teams, and once they log in, they're taken directly to the relevant screens for their teams. And you can also have a single player in multiple games. For example, if you are running a War College course and you have several war games playing out, and you can change which war game you're looking at and drop down into a different one from the same login. And this can be used for synchronous or asynchronous play. Initially, this was used for asynchronous play, where somebody would log in, update their information, and then come back the next day or two to see what has changed. This is the initial case study where War Games was run initially in the UK Fight Club, and I saw that there's some participants in this conference that were members of the UK Fight Club, so I am eternally grateful for their assistance in developing this. They're an organization in NATO dedicated to wargaming, and they had a lot of the same challenges that everybody did during COVID in terms of running war games while trying to integrate distributed participants. So we ran a gray zone competition scenario that was sponsored by the UK Ministry of Defence, and the UK Fight Club was able to design their own scenario and injects and run their own game. And at the end of the day, they had a little over 60 players on 6 teams across 8 time zones in a 6-week game. They dedicated about 1 week per turn to give everybody time to review arguments, make comments, and then allow the white cell to have some input and update the game board in between turns. In terms of applications for Warpaths, initially you can tell by the design of the interface. This is primarily oriented on military. It could be used for both educational and operational purposes. This is an ideal tool to help with distance learning, but also has some tools in there for in-person synchronous play. In the operational force, this is more at the strategic level, so you can design and develop concepts. The one drawback on this is that this is run on the open internet. It is on the development path to eventually push this up to some of the classified networks, but we're not there yet. Here's some of the scenarios they can use this for. There's anything that requires a map, use of a map, and integrates some sort of strategic challenge. This is a good tool for. So beyond the military, I'm also in the process of developing crisispath.io, which is going to be more government-focused, non-military. The main difference is going to be, rather than the red, blue, green sides that are typically used in a military war game, there will be no sides. So this will be kind of more no natural built-in allies in the setup. And I'm also in some talks to develop some corporate applications, and I hope to be moving that side forward quickly. So if you got any questions about this, I'll be sharing my email at the end if you'd like some more details about how these tools are going to be developed in the coming months. I just want to go over a couple of quick advantages. One of the primary goals of this is to improve information quality in your war game. This is designed for asynchronous play initially, so it gives you some time for everybody to break away, think about the scenario, any new information that you want to bring in. This is kind of an area of interest for me in terms of the academic work that I've done and making sure that biases are controlled in decision process. And when you have a very condensed time frame to do a very complex war game, there's been some interesting studies showing, there's a lot of bias that tends to creep into a lot of the decision making just because everybody defaults to what they know. So running some sort of asynchronous or at least a part-time war game allows everybody to break away, think about everything, and gather some new information to bring into the game. And this is also designed to easily reset and rework the game. So if you want to run everything back to turn 0 and start the scenario again, it's built to allow you to easily do that. I've already mentioned that this is designed for rapid setup, customizable at the user level. And also the final advantage is in the information capture. You have a complete game history built in with the platform. And there's also some tools to export arguments and comments if you want to put them in a text file and manipulate them afterwards. And with that, I'll transition over to the demo. What you're looking at right now is the main interface for Warpaths. Once you log in, like I mentioned before, this works on an email invite system. So once that email invite goes out, you'll log in, and then this is the initial screen that you're taken to. What I'll do is I'll primarily focus on the front ends or the gameplay aspect of this, and depending on the amount of time that I've got left, I'll show you some of the back end game setup. And we'll leave about 20 minutes for questions. So if you want to go into a little bit more detail on the back end, I'll be happy to do that. But we'll primarily focus on the front end right now. So in this main interface, I'll give you a quick introduction. Again, this is for Matrix War Games. So as you look across the top, this is the main interface, or viewing the current situation. This is where you draft your arguments. This will be bounced over to review new arguments for each of the teams, and the white cell to review, provide inputs, and adjudicate. And then you'll transition over to the game history once the adjudication process is done. And I'll hit the team area in a little bit, which is a common area for discussions internal to the team, as well as an area for you to develop your strategy into the game. So down here, I've got test demo to demonstrate everything. And in this test demo, we're currently within turn 2. There's a timer associated with each turn. And right now, there's a little less than 9 hours left for everybody to develop their arguments. And we can check on the status of each team to see where they are in the process as they advance their arguments towards the game history. This game ID is basically your path, or your pass rather, to conduct a game. The name of this game ID is Warpaths Demo. The main interface is kind of centered around a map. This map is interactive. You can set your default view to a couple city blocks if you want to. Move over to the South China Sea for this test demo. I just happen to be focused on the European theater of operations. There's 2 main categories of information that are displayed on the map. One is a system of color-coded conditions that are created by the white cell. These conditions can be anything that you want. Again, this is part of the aspect of building the scenario that you want in the game. You can have up to 5 different conditions. This pop-up window over here matches the shade of the colors to a degree of the condition. So you write the overview and then assign what the weak, moderate, and strong condition is for each of your conditions. And there's a different shade of colors associated with each to help keep it straight in the minds of the players. Again, each with their own information pop-up window that'll match the shades to the degree of the conditions. We've also got the same information 1 political level down from the state. So if you're playing an internal instability scenario, this allows you to push those conditions down below the 1 level below the level of the state. If you have other types of conditions that you want to display within a city, for example, or if you want to use this larger political boundaries than just states, we can do that. It just takes a little bit of development in developing the shape files that I can upload into the map service that I'm using, and you'll have access to those to drive color changes on the map. So the other major category of information displayed on the map are units. These are icons that are icons rather. Within the subset of icons, these are the units. Each unit has a pop-up set of information that lets you know what team they're on. You can assign names as well as a major activity down below. Each of these are assigned to teams as well as the allies, blue, red, and green. And you can have as many teams as you want on one of those sides. There's also a series of incident icons, again, with a different set of pop-up information, just basically a title and a description of what's playing out in the background. During each turn, the white cell can modify any of these incident icons, and in the argument process, you're able to propose changes to the position as well as the activity of each of the units, and then the white cell can adjudicate and either approve or disapprove those changes. There are also icons for locations. These are more enduring spots on the map, markets, political buildings, things that you want to have more enduring displayed on the map. So that's kind of the overview of the interface. Again, you can set your default view on here and up to 5 conditions and view any of the icons with the pop-up window over here with the select buttons. We'll transition down to the bottom here. Down here, below the map, there's 2 categories of information feeds. One is a news feed, which is primarily intended to be additional augmenting information for any of the icons that played out over here. Once you click on the title, it'll expand to some additional information down below. And you can also have hyperlinks in here. So if you want to link to an external website, you can also do that. And the other they're also sortable by tags. So if you want to filter by any of the tags, you can do so. Up to 3 tags are allowable. And I'll show you on the back end how these news items are created. The other category of information feeds in the main map here is the scenario background. This is your road to war. You can write titles, a description, as well as provide a link to a video that'll display up in a map or in a box down here. I don't think I have anything to just demonstrate that, but it'll pop up in the bottom down here. That's primarily for YouTube, although we can use Vimeo if that's what your desire is. And then you can flip through these or navigate directly by clicking on them. These can be as simple as 1 or 2 slides if that's what you want to start your scenario, or if you want to have a series of 50 slides where you've got different categories, you can do that as well to provide a very rich background to provide everybody the road to war. So with that, that kind of wraps up the main view map area, and I'll transition over to the drafting argument. So I'm logged in as the white cell right now, so I will see all of the team's arguments populate across this slide bar as they come in. And right now, as you see, only the United States as a team is currently drafting their argument. As the white cell, in order to view what's being written, anything that's been saved, I just click on the United States, and it'll give me the information that's populating or that they've saved so far in their drafting of their argument. There are character count limits that you can set to control the amount of information that everybody puts in. And you can see here they've exceeded the character count limit. They won't be able to save or submit this unless that gets down below the 300 character limit established by the white cell. In drafting an argument, there's basically a package that goes in for each of the teams as they submit the arguments. There's a total of 3 arguments that you can have. You can limit this down to a single argument if that's how you want to play your scenario. And these arguments can be named anything that you want them to be. In this test demo, I'm using military, informational, and economic. The UK Fight Club had open 1, open 2, and secret. And that secret argument hides is an option built in down here, and will hide the text from the other teams as everything is being reviewed in the adjudication as well as the history. And then within a certain amount of turns, you'll see that revealed in the history, so somebody can look back, say 3 turns if that's what you select, to see what was written in this argument a couple turns back. So with the United States up, I can flip through each of the arguments to see what's been written. You can see nothing's been added in each of these 3. And then in these last 2 of the 3, rather. And then I'll click over here to country impacts. This is where you're proposing changes to the colors of the conditions that are reflected on the map, and it just works by a simple drop down. You can select any of the conditions that you want, and then remind yourself with the information button here how each of these conditions and degrees were defined by the white cell in the initial game setup. And then the countries that populate here are also selected by the white cell. They do not have to be connected to the teams that are in play. These are only for the things that you want displayed on the map as far as the colors. Basically, wherever your focus is on the map, that's kind of where you're going to want to have these colors displayed. I've got the same information for the regions or the one political level down from the state. And if I need to remind myself where each of those are, there's a little pop-up window that'll shade in the area of the country that county is in for Belarus. And this operates the same way with the drop-down. And finally, there's unit movement, where I will see only my current units that are in play. These are what you would see on the main map. These are the current positions. In order to change it, all I want to do is click Edit. I can drag it to a new location, update the unit's activity, and save it. And what I've done is create a new proposed location. So when everything goes into the white cell for adjudication, they can decide whether or not each of these proposed locations are accepted or rejected by unit. And then they can, if you want, you can reset everything back to your current locations. So this is current and that's proposed. And all of these go in as a single package and will be reviewed by the white cell as well as the other teams during the adjudication process. And with that, I'll transition over to the review new arguments. I'll start down at the bottom here, and just to give you an idea of how this plays out, this is primarily oriented to the asynchronous play, and the top half here is primarily oriented to anybody that's going to play a synchronous game where everybody's logged in on a video call like this, and I'll demonstrate the tools for the synchronous play in a minute. So starting down here at the bottom, again, as I'm viewing this as the white cell, if I was another team, I would not be able to see anything that's coming in from any of the other teams until that timer runs out. And that just prevents everybody from trying to game the system and take a look at each other's arguments and update your argument based on that. So this is hidden from everybody until that time expires. But once it does expire, I'll have the option the ability to click on Russia and take a look at the information that's filled in here for their arguments, as well as make comments. So in this comment system, I've already created a comment here. I can delete this. In order to create a comment, all I need to do is click here to create, and this is limited to one comment per team. And this just prevents an endless series of comments that come in. So if you're on another team, you just click here to create a comment, and then you can click Edit and update any of the information that you want to, either objecting to what's being proposed in the argument or providing some supporting fires if you were on the same team. And each of these comments is going to be different for each of the three arguments. In this situation, Russia's third argument, or the economic argument, is secret. As the white cell, I have the option to just dismiss this and view the information below. If I was another team, I would just see that warning banner and not see any of the information below here. This would basically all be hidden, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to review or provide comments. In the country impacts area, I'm only going to see any of the changes that were proposed by country. So in this argument that came in, the condition that was addressed was NATO affinity, and this was a change that was proposed. As the white cell, if I deem it necessary, I can change that proposed information and then approve it, which will update the main map. Same thing for the region impacts. And then for the unit movement, I can review and either approve or reject each of the individual moves as I cycle through here to review each of the units. All right, so with that, or actually before I jump up to there, so once that's all done and everybody has provided the comments, and there's a timer associated with the comment period that you can use as well that will disable the ability to create comments once the timer expires. Once that process is done as the white cell, I can either approve the argument and move it into the history, or else reject the argument and bump it back to the drafting phase if, for example, this team or a series of teams didn't address everything that was intended to be addressed during the turn, and we want to bump it back to drafting. I'll put some more time on the clock to have everybody update their arguments. Up at the top, this is designed to be kind of a dashboard to help everybody coordinate a synchronous game. All the information that you saw on the main map here in terms of the news items, the country conditions are available here in pop-ups on the side. The map is still interactive, and we'll still have all these same information available for each of the icons as you click on them. So what I'm going to do right now is split my screen. On this side, I am logged in as, as Great Britain. And what I'm going to do is show one of the tools for creating a survey. And these are some of the tools for the synchronous play. So if I want to create a survey, say, for example, some condition has had, or some scenario in the game has arisen in which there's a fundamental disagreement, and I want to run a survey with everybody in the audience, I can do that. So I'll type out my question and then display that survey to all the players. And you can see here, as a Great Britain player, this map, or this is popped up next to the map, and I have an opportunity to respond. I'll do that. And once I respond, I lose the ability to provide any further responses. If I choose to, I can respond as the white cell. And once that's done, I can review the results as the white in a graph and see the median responses that have come in. And if I want to add any notes, I can do that and display the results back to the players. There we go. So, and then as a player, I can see all the responses that came in graphed across, as well as any notes that were added by the white cell. And then you can use that as a tool to facilitate any discussion about that situation that arisen. So let's say, for example, if I want to take this survey and then roll it into a dice roll, I can do that as well. I'll allow Great Britain to have a dice roll. It's Great Britain's roll. And I'll display, I can have anywhere between 1 and 3. I'll select 2. If I need to review the probability chart, that's available in the pop-up here for each of the dice. I'll identify a success or failure threshold, depending on how you want to define it. Once that's done, Great Britain over here will have the ability to roll a single time. Once you click, there's a dramatic pause, and then everybody will see the dice that come up at the same time. So everybody's on the same sheet of music in terms of what happened during that dice roll. If instead I want to use a probability generator, which might match a little bit better with the percentages that are used in the response, I can do that. I'll say 60. And then again, I can roll, and then the random number generator will assign a percentage. And then depending on how you define that threshold, I'll be able to adjudicate that process. So once you're done, you can hide the dice to prevent anybody from being distracted. You can either delete the survey if you want, or you can archive it, and that'll display in the game history. So for right now, I'll delete it since that wasn't a legitimate. And what I just want to show you here is, since I had this scrunched down a little bit, it's a little odd, but as a player, I'm still not going to see any of those arguments that popped up for Russia, for example, which I'm seeing down here as the white cell. All right, so with that, I'm going to transition over to reviewing the game history. I'll spend about 15 more minutes going through this, and then I'll transition over to questions. I'll be happy to navigate to any part of this if you want to review anything. So this is the game history area, and this is intended to give you, like, obviously, a complete history of what played out during the game. I'll point out that this turn right now, turn 2, is still in progress. So the only turns that I'm going to see in the history are turn 1 and turn 0. So if I want to look at turn 0, I can do that. These are basically your initial conditions with any of the icons that were created to start the scenario. And these are all the scenario background slides that I showed you before. If I want to view the next turn, I can do that. And here's where I start to populate the arguments that were submitted by each of the teams. So if I want to review Great Britain's, I can see the 3 arguments that came in. And as a white cell, again, I can dismiss this and review any of the information, as well as the comments that came in from each of the teams at the argument owner's response, and any comments provided by the white cell for that team's comments, as well as overall white cell comments for Great Britain's military argument here. And I've got the same information for each of the teams that submitted their arguments for the turn. I can review any of the news items that came in for that turn up here, as well as any of the surveys. So if I click on the survey, this is just a quick demo data. I can see the notes that came in. The question would populate here, as well as all the responses that came in for that survey. I can also review the color conditions and how they changed over time. So you can see from one turn to the next, I'm getting an updated system of, or an updated set of colors rather, that showed how the map evolved over the course of the game. And I'll have that same information one political level down for those countries that I've got that information displayed for. And each of the turns will update the unit icon, or the incident icons rather, to let you know what were the incidents that took place during that turn. And that is a quick overview of the game history. So, and this will go all the way back for anything that was played out and completed. So if you've got, a 50 turn game, you'll be able to review 49 turns until that 50th turn is complete and you're ready to move forward. So I'll jump over here to the team area. The team area has basically the functions that you need as a team in order to participate in the game. Again, I'm viewing this as the white cell, so there's a couple different things that I'm going to look at here. First is an internal team discussion, which allows you to have chats. If you're using this as an asynchronous game tool, this gives you the ability to communicate within your team and have a record of all those chats. So as the white cell, I'll click on Great Britain, and I can review all of the chats that have taken place, and I'll have that same information for each of the teams that are participating. So there are 4 categories of messaging that use this same format. 1 is an internal team discussion. 2 is a white cell to all teams, so kind of a game announcement function. An allies, blue, will have the access to their chat area. Red will have their own set of allies chat in this area. And then the direct messages are from one team to the other, and there's no restrictions here. Any team leader can reach out and talk to another team. This gives you the ability to simulate back channels for kind of a diplomatic aspect of the game. If you notice, I've got a red dot here that will show up in my team area to let me know that there is a message that I have not yet reviewed. And once I've navigated over here to review that message, as test message for connections, that dot will go away. And I've reviewed all the messages that I have to, and I'll have 1 dot appear for each of these types of messages that pop up. In the strategy area, this is where you can create your own strategies. If you, as the white cell, want to be directive and assign a strategy for each of the teams, right now there's only 2 categories: strategic objectives and a description of strategic approach. You can be directive, or in the game options, if you want, you can allow teams to develop their own strategies and move from there. But if you want to run, say you want to run multiple iterations of a game on a single scenario, you may want to be directive just in order to hold these variables as the strategy is constant from one game to the next, and see how each team will approach their strategic objectives and approach. And that just gives the ability to isolate those variables a little bit better. So that kind of wraps up everything on the front end of the game. And right now I'm going to transition up for about 10 minutes over to the back end and give you a flavor for how some of these games can be set up to meet any of your needs. And then we'll transition in about 10 minutes to any questions that you've got, and I'll be happy to navigate to anything on the platform. So we'll start out in the team area, or team admin area rather. This is where I will create and edit my teams. Right now, I've only got 3 in the hopper, but if I want to have another one, I can do that. Assign it to red. Once I create that team, it'll populate over here, and I can edit it, change it if I want as I'm clicking through. So I've just added a team. Once I've done that, I can add members against that team. So in this demo data, I just happen to be at the max number of members, but I can select a team to assign somebody to. And in this test demo, this is first and last name in order to keep it straight for everybody that's participating. This is just Great Britain and lead or member as the first and last name. What I need to do for adding a team member, I'll just assign a team, assign a role, team member or team leader. The major difference is team leaders are able to communicate between teams, and they're also responsible for clicking the final submit button their arguments to move it over to the adjudication process. You add a first name and a last name, and once you enter in an email, this will generate an automatic email invite that's sent out to that participant, and you'll be able to get them into the game, and it works pretty easy. I've run a war game where I had about 25 members on a game, and we were able to get everybody logged in and assigned to their teams in about 10 minutes. So it's pretty easy. And once that's done, you can, oh, by the way, if somebody pops up that's already in the system, for example, somebody might be part of multiple war games, you'll just get an option to add this game ID to their account, and then they can navigate over here and select a different war game to jump over to whatever war game they're associated with. You can also edit team members and regenerate an email invite if for whatever reason that invite got screened out by some of the filters that are out there with the government computers you might run into. So that's the team admin area where you're setting up the teams and inviting members. And I'll jump over to the white cell area, which is your game setup. In the white cell area, there's two main categories of information that you're dealing with. One is the execution and one is the initial setup. The execution is the stuff you'll be dealing with, in between turns where you want to generate incidents. Maybe you want to add units to the to each of the teams. The turn management is where you identify the expiration time for each of the turns and then generate the news items. So we'll start with the scenario incidents here on the execution. So I'm reviewing all the incidents that I've got. Let's say I want to add a new one in Moscow. I can create click here for creating an assassination. The yellow one is kind of an unknown. I'll click here on the map, which fills out the latitude and the longitude. I'll give it an incident, description, and then I'll create the incident. Once I do that, it'll populate on the map. If I want to change anything, I can click on it. It'll highlight that this is an existing incident. I can edit it. If I want to drag it to a new location, I can do that and update the incident. So if you want to create a new incident and it doesn't end up in the exact spot that you want to zoom in and put it again inside of a particular building that's on the map if you want, you can continue to zoom in and refine that positioning of that icon. There's also an option to either make it visible to the players or not. So if you're a white cell and you want to front load a bunch of icons that you've created, but you don't yet want to display them to the players, there's an option here to hide these incidents until you go back in, edit them, check it, and then they'll be available on the main map. The unit placement is basically the same, works on the same principle, where it'll display all the units. You can create a new one by clicking on it, or if you want to edit an existing unit, you can click on it on the map and make the same types of changes that I just showed you. The only difference is you're assigning them to a particular team. Over in the turn management, this is where you're starting, stopping the turns, and identifying the expiration date. This just works on a simple drop-down with the date and time. It works on 30-minute intervals. But if you want to end the current turn because everybody is complete, you can end it early, and then you can't start the next turn until the current turn has ended. We'll jump over the news items. This basically is a blog system for the news items that display in between the turns that I showed you up front. I've got some test data up here. I'll show when you click it, it'll start to fill out some of the data. I don't really have any information in here yet. It's assigned against a turn, but I've got a series of tags that I can click and change using just by either clicking the X to remove it. I can remove it from the global tags that I've got down here. If I want to add a military tag, I can do that and create a new one over here. Once I click edit, I can fill out as much information as I want, include hyperlinks if that's what I want to do. And once I've done, if I want to publish that item, it'll display over here in the publish news items. And if I want to pull something back from published, I can just click edit and make my changes for that. And this will update the news feed that you saw on the front end. And finally, we'll hit the initial setup. Well, starting down here at the bottom, these are where all of your options are, and this is only available to the white cell, by the way. So once you see this white cell, the other teams are not going to see that. Only the white cell has access to this area. They're logged out if they try to access this directly. In the game options, this is where I'll disable strategy boxes, all those things that I told you that the white cell has control over, identifying the character limits for the arguments. This is where you make those changes. I'll jump up here to create condition types, the game notifications. If you're using Slack, this gives you the ability to generate and post Slack messages to the general channel that just lets everybody know, hey, a turn has ended, a turn has started, so-and-so team has completed their arguments, etc. In the create condition types, this is these are the 5 conditions that are displayed on the main map, and it works pretty easy. If I go down here to the bottom, I can create a new condition, identify the condition title, and then this will automatically assign it to a color, and you can only delete the last one in order to keep the color straight. Right now, I've only got 3 with all of the conditions defined and with all the degrees defined here. The argument types, this is where you name your arguments and provide them with a description. Again, these can be anything that you want. There's a character limit in here just to make sure that it displays correctly on the drafting of the arguments. And these are basically the entire world's countries that you want to use to drive the color changes on the map. And this just works by a simple add or remove with a simple click. You'll get a warning if you want to delete something, because you'll lose all the information associated with this country. For example, the history changes of the colors. You'll get a warning if you try to remove it to make sure that that's what you want to do. Once you've got those countries selected, you assign the conditions with the drop downs. These are your initial conditions, or if you want to go in and change things in the middle of the game, you can do that as well. And again, this is a information pop-up to remind yourself, how did you define this condition and what are the degrees associated with each of these that are in the drop-down menu. The same information is available for the admin 1 regions. I've only got 4 in here right now, but if you've got others that you want to add to the database to support your game, we'll just have to coordinate which ones you need and create those shape files to drive those colors. And the conditions are driven by the same drop-down process here. This is your reset game info. So let's say, for example, if I want to take a game that I've been playing and reset it to turn 0, I can do that, and it'll basically overwrite all of the information that I've created over the course of the game. If I want to just reset the game, I can do that to play it again to see if I get a different outcome. And then finally, this is your scenario background, where you're just flipping through here, and you can add the item title, description, as well as add the video URL that I mentioned if you want to include that for your background. So with that, there's only one other area that I want to cover, and that's the data pulls. So with the data pulls here, the intent is to give you a record of the arguments that were created. If you want to keep the color-coded conditions that played out, or the incidents that played out and where they were located, you have to hold on to the game ID. But if you just want to export the information that played out in each turn, it works this way. So we'll click on the United States, select a turn, we'll go to turn 1, and what it will do is populate the body of an email with all of the arguments that were submitted by the United States, their justifications, and any comments that came in by team, any white cell comments for the team that submitted it, as well as the overarching final white cell adjudication comments for that argument. And all you need to do is identify an email that you want to send that report to, and this will generate a text email, and you can have a record for the United States for that turn. And then as you flip through here, well, the turn 2 is not yet complete, but this is the stuff that's being drafted right now. And then you can send that record wherever you need to. So with that, I'll jump back to the main map, and I will pause there and jump into any questions that you might have. I appreciate the time that you've given me so far.
Okay, Tom, that's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Chris, can we keep the screen as it is, just in case Tom needs to demonstrate live as we go with these questions? Yeah, Tom, that's fantastic. Thank you. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a couple of really good endorsements that scrolled across the bottom as you were talking, from the UK Fight Club and from someone who'd participated in the Grey Zone game that you mentioned. It was also great to hear you refer to us as Great Britain. Fantastic. Haven't heard that for a while. So the questions then, we'll go through these in the order that they came in. So the first question is, are the maps all predefined, and where do you get them from? And personally, I'm interested in things like overlays. Can you put ethnic, religious overlays or things of that nature?
So I can generate overlays. It'll take a little bit of development to do that. So if somebody is interested in doing that, it'll just take a little bit more work, as well as defining it. Right now, the only overlays are driven by the conditions and the coloring of the map. But this map is basically just a global map, and you can navigate to wherever you want and set a default view. So if I wanted to, zoom into the South China Sea or whatever, I can do that. That'll be my default view for each of the teams as they log in, and that's what they'll see. On the development roadmap right now, I would like to include heat maps, for example, for natural disasters, where you can display, where is the greatest damage from that natural disaster, and give different degrees of that. That's not currently integrated, but I need to have a client that's interested in developing that, so that we can have a conversation to make sure that I'm developing this in a way that's useful. So if I did that myself, I don't necessarily know that I would create something that's useful for the greatest number of people, and that's where the UK Flight Club became very useful, in that I generated the initial version of Warpaths, and then their input was very helpful in defining what were the what polishing needed to be done to make this useful. So in order to move beyond the current map functions, I just need a client interested in developing that, so that I can have that conversation and define it in a way that's useful.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Second question then, is there a preferred browser that handles Warpaths, and if so, which is the best?
As long as it's got to be a modern browser. The Internet Explorer will not work well, just because Internet Explorer is not getting updated, is no longer maintained to deal with the latest versions or updates to JavaScript, etc. When it comes to government computers, if you're using it on a government system, we seem to have problems with Chrome. So anything else outside of that will work fine. We've used Edge and Firefox very successfully on government computer systems, but on a private network, any modern browser will function just fine.
Okay, Chris, I'm afraid I'm going to go out of order because the question has just popped in, which naturally follows on from the last one. And that question is, Chris, you're ahead of me. You can see what it is. The Army is blocking Warpaths.
So I know it's been accessed from multiple Army-centric organizations. That's probably a local firewall issue, and if I can get specific details, I can help you solve that. For example, at CENTCOM, we had to submit just a request to get it listed on the whitelist, and the access was no problems. So I know there's been a series of updates lately, and typically just requires a request to add to an accepted whitelist, and then within a couple days, it's available through those networks.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. And then the next question is, are there Warpaths tutorials available?
So what I've done is put together, I've got a series of videos on the introduction, which covers some of this stuff in a little bit more detail that I'll share. But I am in the process of generating very specific tutorials that'll pop up on each page. So if you're in as a white cell member, for example, and you're in the team admin area, and you want to know how to create a new team, I'll have a pop-up window with a short video demonstrating how to do that. So I'm in the process of adding those. That's not yet launched, but is in the works.
Okay, thank you. And then a couple from me, I'm afraid. So the first one pertains to adjudication. What other adjudication methods have you seen the white cell use other than polling and dice random number generators? And the reason I ask that is in particularly with respect to grey zone activities, which are obviously, I would think, more difficult to adjudicate than conventional operations, if you like. So what have you seen the white cell use?
It's typical, as a matrix. As a matrix wargame platform, it's relied heavily on the white cell expertise and the participants that are in the white cell, and allowing them to review both the argument that came in, the objection that may have come in from an opposing team, and finally the response from the argument owner. So it's really a back and forth, and once that back and forth process is done, it's just the white cell reviewing and seeing which arguments they found most compelling in the adjudication process.
So SME judgment is the primary method.
SME judgment, particularly for the asynchronous games, the surveys and dice rolls that I've shown you are primarily oriented towards a synchronous game where you've got everybody on a video conference call like this, and you've got it makes sense to run those kinds of situations to poll everybody to get some quick inputs on how to address a particular situation.
Okay, right, cool, useful, thank you. So the next one is pertaining to the structuring of questions. So you've got, I think I saw you had the team making the argument was allowed to put forward 3 reasons why that argument would succeed, check. Do you structure the counter arguments from anyone else in the same way and also limit those to 3?
No, so the comments, and let me bring it up real quick. All right, so for this military argument, so you've got 3 arguments again, as I mentioned before. So for this military argument, you've got the action and results, and the factors favoring success 1, 2, and 3. Not required to add 2 and 3, but you need at least 1 to be able to submit an argument for adjudication. The comment system is a free-form text box and limited only by the white cell character count limits that are established in the game option. So if this team that's providing a comment here right now, I'm commenting as the white cell. If I want to address this military argument, that's where I create that comment. But I've got a different area where I can create another comment for this informational argument. For example, if Russia's had submitted an informational argument, nothing came in for this in this test data, but you'd have a free text box that's associated with this argument and a different free-form text box for each of the other 2. And then the expectation is whatever argument you form in these 3 categories of arguments are going to be reflected in the country impacts and driven by the unit movements. So the comments are only tied to the arguments and not necessarily the impacts.
Okay, cool. All right, good stuff. Very clear. Thank you. And the final question, this is actually from Chris. So if anyone else has got any other questions, we've got another 10 minutes, just pop them into the chat, please. So the next question then from Chris. As a Warpaths participant, it was great to see how agile the Warpaths team were to the different variables. You can read it as well as I can read it. So I'll let you read the question, then answer it, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, so, I mean, if I understand the correction, how did I find it as a facilitator, member of the white cell on the other side, just to view, what's playing out? I mean, this is kind of built with the intent of making life easy on the white cell, which is typically hard, especially in distributed games, in order to allow them to have a good understanding of the arguments that are being drafted. I mean, as the white cell, you can drop in and look at the draft arguments before they're submitted. To get an understanding of what's being developed, review the team chats that are taking place, taking place. Look at the proposed changes to the units and conditions that are coming in before they're posted as part of the final argument. So on the white cell side, at least the intent right now is to maximize the white cell's visibility on all aspects of the game within the teams without actually being there. And then finally, for somebody that's running a synchronous game, there's a lot of challenge in documenting everything that took place in the game. You have to have a note taker in the room taking notes and might be missing something. So with a platform like this, it allows you to capture a lot of the arguments and have them in an easily reviewable format. So this is, again, my hope is that anybody that's on the white cell side will find this maximizes their visibility into what's taking place in the game, as well as maximizes their ability to review what has taken place throughout the game, from the historical standpoint, particularly when it comes to generating any kind of analysis for the game and taking lessons learned out of it.
Yeah, well, and generating that data is obviously critical, and this obviously gives you that in spades, which is fantastic. Okay, one more question has come in. Has anyone expressed interest in moving this to a classified network?
Yes, this is something that's on the roadmap, and I would like to do it, but this is something that requires some time and money. So right now, the hope is that I can grab enough clients so that I can finance the transition and the review process, and the it's kind of a long, challenging process to get that moved up to a classified network. But it's going to take some time and money, but I hope to be able to get there within a year or two. And in the meantime, my hope is to start grabbing on the clients between now and then to finance that move.
Cool. Okay, and I think the banner along the bottom just sums it all up. Tom, that was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Can I make one point from a great British perspective, and then just mention what you and I are going to be doing at Connections UK, and that is that the white cell over in UK wargaming doctrine. The white cell is not the control cell, and I'm sure you find this when you've come across and used and worked with UK Fight Club and the rest of it. We use that to describe things like IOs, NGOs, diplomacy, whatever it may be, and we just call the control cell the control cell. So if there's any UK people listening in, then they might. I just wanted to make that clear so we didn't get any confusion. And Tom, I don't know if you want to say anything to this, but you and I will be working at Connections UK in September, 14th to the 16th, where I hope that you can actually run what you've just been talking about. And it would be fantastic if it was both an asynchronous version and a separate live version. So as far as we're concerned, it is just the gates are open. It's mission command. Come and do whatever you want to do. As long as it is hands-on learning by doing, then I look forward very much to seeing you in September. Do you want to say anything to that? Otherwise, It's just a big thank you.
Sure, absolutely. So the intent is to provide invites to everybody, so that anybody that wants to participate in the game can be can get a login, be assigned to a team. We can run a couple iterations or a couple turns rather of the game, and this is set up, if I didn't mention it, so that you're able to play this both on laptops and cell phones, so you can review information on your cell phones. There's a mobile version of the majority of the pages. The main difference is you just can't submit final information. So the intent is, get everybody logged in, play a game using these tools, and then we can take that same game and transition it over to a synchronous game, and then transition back to asynchronous. So depending on how we want to set it up and run it, we can either run two different games, or take that same game and transition between synchronous and asynchronous play.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, I really look forward to working with you and building up towards September. Anyone who's listening in, come and play in September. We'll see you at Connections UK. Tom, that was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I appreciate it.